Hi everyone. In today's lesson we're going to review angles in standard position as well as coterminal angles and reference angles. So let's first discuss how to graph angles in standard position on the coordinate plane or on the XY axis. So the first thing that we need to understand is that if we are right here it is 0 degrees. If we are here it's 90. Here is 180. Here is 270. And here is also 360. So these are called what we call quadrantal angles. They lie right on an angle. Like for example, if I wanted to draw the angle of 90 degrees, it looks like this. This is my 90-degree angle right in here, and it's an angle that lies on the X and Y axis. So again, angles that lie exactly on the X and Y axis are called quadrantal angles. Okay, they are 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360. Now technically I could keep going if I really wanted to. I could add another 90 after I get to 360. So 360 plus 90 is 450, and so on and so on. But these are the 4 or 5 main quadrantal angles. Okay, an angle in standard position is if its vertex is located at the origin and one ray is on the positive side of the x-axis and the ray on the x-axis is called the initial side and the other ray is called the terminal side. So here's an example of an angle in standard position. The initial side is always going to be here on this positive side of the x-axis, and the terminal side is where the angle ends. So just to review our quadrants real quick, this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. So this angle here lies in quadrant 2. So an example of an angle, if this is between 90 and 180, could be approximately 100 degrees. Now, positive angles go counterclockwise, like this one. But I could also go negative. So there's actually 2 angles here. There's one going up and around this way, but then there's also a bigger angle going that way. And how I could find that angle is 100 is going this way, so I need a whole other piece to add up to 360 to make a full circle. So this would be 260 degrees negatively. Okay, negative goes clockwise. All right. Just like up here, there's a positive angle going this way, but there's also a negative angle going that way, and that's negative 270. And the way we could label these axes is if I'm going 0 this way and I'm going down, this would be negative 90. This would be negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360 if we were going the other way. So let's practice sketching some of these. So the first one that I want to sketch is 135. Every single angle must have an initial side and a terminal side. So my initial side is right over the x-axis every single time. So we can go ahead and label that. Each one is going to have an initial side that looks like this. And you always want to make it look like it's over the x-axis. You don't want to leave it blank. Okay, now where does the angle end? This first one is 135. So if we recall, this is 0, this is 90, this is 180, and this is 270, and up here is 360. So this angle of 135 is going to lie in quadrant 2. Now exactly where it goes, it doesn't matter, but as long as it's there in quadrant 2, and we want to draw a little arrow showing the direction, showing that it's going counterclockwise, otherwise it could be this back angle out here. Okay, and then you want to label that it's 135. All right, the second one. So I'm not going to rewrite all of these angles again, but if you need to, you can. So where would 300 be? It looks like 300 would be between 270 and 360. So it's going to end in quadrant 4. So again, the angle is drawn counterclockwise. So we need all those parts. We need an initial side, a terminal side, and the direction in which it's going. And label. So let's label this as 300 degrees. All right, how about negative 120? Well, if this is 0, this is negative 90, negative 180, and negative 270, and also negative 360. All right, since we're going negative this time, so where would negative 120 be? It would be probably somewhere between here and here. But now look which way I'm drawing the arrow. The arrow is going that way because it's negative. So we'll label this as negative 120. All right, now let's look at negative 280. Where is that going to go? So if we look here, here's negative 270, so negative 280 would be here. So something like that. And we draw the arrow going around the opposite way, and we label it with negative 280. Okay, these next four examples are over 360. So you just have to keep counting. So for example, I'll do this first one with you. This is 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, add 90, 450, and so on and so on. I stopped there because it said 385. So we know it's going to end in quadrant 1, but we have to show the angle that it started here, went around, and then back up again. So you have to show that continuous loop around, and that is 385. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is try these next three all by yourselves, and tomorrow I'll give you the answers. All right, let's move on to the next page. This next page is all about coterminal angles. So we say that angles are said to be coterminal if their angles in standard position have the same terminal side. Now, coterminal angles can be found by adding and subtracting, so adding or subtracting 360. Okay, 360 degrees is one full circle. So watch, here's 120 this way, positive. It's the same thing as negative 240. So how do we get there? Well, if I take 120 and subtract 360, you should get negative 240. Now, if I take this negative 240, if I start here, I can add 360, and I'll get my positive 120. Okay, so that is how coterminal works. Let's try an example now. It says, find a positive coterminal angle for each. So I could keep adding and subtracting 360, and I'll still be in the same spot. So if it says find a positive, for this example, I could add 360, or I could subtract 360. So 845 plus 360 is 1,205, or I could take 845 and subtract 360 and get 485. Both of these are possible coterminal angles that are positive. How about example number 2? I have 735. So what I could do is add 360 if I want to. I could add 360 twice if I wanted to. I could subtract 360 or even subtract 360 twice. Let's see what happens. So 735 plus 360 twice is 1,455. And 735 minus 360 and minus 360 again is 15. Okay? These are all possibilities. There's not necessarily one answer. Okay, let's look at part C. If I want to find a positive coterminal angle to negative 557, I'm going to have to add 360 twice until it becomes positive. Otherwise, it's negative, and I can't have that. So if I add 360 and add 360 again, I get positive 163. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is try the next three by yourself, finding a negative coterminal angle, and then we'll go over those in class. All right, let's move on to the next page. Okay, now we are going to review reference angles. So what is a reference angle? A reference angle is the acute angle formed by the terminal side of a given angle and the x-axis. Reference angles may appear in all four quadrants, and angles in quadrant 1 are their own reference angles. So let's just draw an example of an angle in quadrant 1. Let's draw an example of an angle in quadrant 2, an angle in quadrant 3, and an angle in quadrant 4. All right, so the angle in quadrant 1 we will say is 60 degrees. The angle in quadrant 2 we'll say is 120. The angle in quadrant 3 we'll say is 240. And the angle in quadrant 4 we'll say is 330. So what do I mean finding the reference angle? So it says it's the acute angle, so the small angle, if you want to write small, between 0 and 90. Okay? It's an angle that is formed by the terminal side of the angle. So this is always the initial, this is the terminal. So the terminal side of the angle and the x-axis. So terminal side of the angle and x-axis. So in quadrant 1, it is its own reference angle. It's 60 degrees. Okay, how about quadrant 2? Here's the initial side of the angle. Here's the terminal side of the angle. So we say a reference angle is the angle formed by the terminal side of the angle and the x-axis, which is here. So it's this angle in here. So how many more degrees do I need to get to 180? That's what you want to think about. I already have 120. How many more to finish to get to 180? So we would take 180 and subtract 120, and that's how we would get 60. Okay, how about the angle in quadrant 3? So again, this is the initial side of the angle, this is the terminal side of the angle. So the angle formed between the terminal side of the angle and the x-axis is this little piece right in here. So watch, from here to here is 180. So 180 plus what, which is this piece in here, gives me 240. So we would take 240 and subtract 180, and we'd get 60. Okay? And now the last one would be to find the angle between the terminal side of the angle, that's the terminal, this is the initial, and the x-axis. So here, this angle in here is my reference angle. So if this makes a full circle, I could take a full circle minus 330. So 360 minus 330, and I get 30 degrees. That's my reference angle. Now, it was just coincidental that all three of these were 60. They're not always going to be 60. Okay, let's now map out what we will generally have. If we have an angle in quadrant 1, it's its own reference angle. Okay? If I want to find a reference angle in quadrant 2, I do 180 minus theta, which we'll call the angle. Theta is a Greek letter for angle. If I want to find an angle in quadrant 3, a reference angle, we are going to take the angle itself and subtract 180, right? We took the 240 minus 180. And what did we do here in quadrant 4? We took 360 and we subtracted the angle. So those are your 4 rules for a reference angle, okay? So find the reference angle for each of the following angle measures. So for 115, we know that that's an angle in quadrant 2, so we're going to do 180 minus 115. And that gives us 65, okay? How about 310? Where does that lie? 310 is in quadrant 4. So we take 360, so this is quadrant 4. So 360 minus 310 is 50. That's my reference angle. All right, number 3 is a little bit tricky. It's over 360 degrees. It's 495. So the first thing you want to do is make this coterminal. So we'll subtract and get 135. 135 ends in quadrant 2. So we do 180 minus 135. And we get 45 degrees. That's my reference angle, okay? Because again, here's the rules for quadrant 2, 180 minus the angle. Okay, where's 250? 250 is in the third quadrant. So we take the angle minus 180. So this is the third quadrant, and we take 250 minus 180, and we get 70, okay? Number 5 is 210. It's in the same spot, quadrant 3. So we'll do 210 minus 180. and we'll get 30. And last but not least is number 6. Number 6 is an angle in quadrant 1, and quadrant 1 is its own reference angle, so 45 degrees. Okay, I know if you're in Algebra 2 for the first time, this is a lot to take in, but if you have seen this material before, I hope this was a good review. And please do not worry, we will spend many days going over this in class, so please jot down any questions you might have and ask tomorrow.